Yes, Nurse Crane? How can I help you?
I'm so sorry. I know Dr. Swansea wanted you to rest, but we have somewhat of a crisis.
A crisis, you say?
Our supply of antiseptics is nearly depleted. I was hoping there was another box up here, but...
Sorry. There's nothing here.
Some of the patients won't last the night without them. Honestly, sir, I'm beside myself.
I may have a solution. In France, during the war, drugs shortage was a daily problem, and we had to use our wits to overcome the shortages.
However do you mean?
If combined correctly, certain household chemical products can be used in a pinch instead. Now, where's the hospital storeroom?
The storeroom? Fat chance. This is the Pembroke, and space is luxury we don't have. Everything used to be stored in the old morgue.
Perhaps I should look there first. Where is this morgue?
It's the large building behind the hospital. You'll need to go in the back door because it's been sealed off for sanitary reasons. Take this key. It opens a small back entrance at the end of a narrow street.
The abandoned morgue behind the hospital. A small door at the end of a narrow street. On my way then. Thank you, nurse. Scowl voices in the garden. I should investigate. If they were to find somebody... Missiles of Mars, fortifiers. As popular as they are ineffective. But they do contain iron tartrate, and that might prove itself useful. Behavior is similar to the infected William Bishop. Must be the same strain. This sickness moves faster than influenza. I cannot enter. This key will surely grant me access to the basement. These skulls feed from corpses and the husks of bones. They're not after blood. It's locked, all right. Mr. Connor's injuries don't match the report. Multiple abrasions and scarring on the arms and legs. Old and distinctive injuries of a sailor or a fisherman. The chest was originally opened to perform the operation. The sutures are clean, but the chest has been reopened. Traces of a pinkish foam at the corner of the lips. Some sort of drug overdose, perhaps? A puncture over the left lung, possibly a chest tube insertion. Not the cleanest work, but I think it was successful. Signs of internal bleeding. So, Dr. Tippett's anesthetics were incorrectly dosed, causing the patient's death. And then he tried to operate on him again. Tippett has made an egregious error. It's time we talked. Scowls can be so ferocious. I'm not sure I can defeat them without becoming stronger. To drink blood is so tempting. It's locked. Good evening, nurse.
Good evening, Doctor. I don't think we've been introduced yet. My name is Pippa Hawkins.
And I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed. Dr. Swansea has recently offered me a position in this hospital.
Well, it's a euphemism that your help will be appreciated, Doctor.
How is the Pembroke staff coping with the epidemic?
Well, not well. Milton, the ambulance driver, is even more grumpy than usual, especially concerning doctors.
Why is Milton grumpy on a daily basis? Is it just an act?
Milton's not the kind of man who's bothered about a bad reputation, whether he deserved it or not.
Why does Milton dislike doctors?
I don't know. Just ask him. But be warned, Milton is not the chatty type.
How long have you been a nurse?
Well, long enough to see that the epidemic is winning. And no matter how qualified you are, don't tell me you'll change that.
You're right. When dealing with such a terrible disease, one must remain humble. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try our best.
Sorry, Doctor. I don't want to sound bitter, but I'm just too tired to give a pep talk like Nurse Brannigan.
How would you describe the situation at the Pembroke Hospital?
It's serious. The flu is wreaking havoc amongst the staff and patients. We are running out of everything.
You must get a hold of yourself, nurse.
Sorry, I'm exhausted. No one has any idea when this epidemic will be over.
Nurse Hawkins, the Spanish flu won't last forever. Even the Black Plague didn't kill everyone.
I wish I could believe you. But what if this epidemic was worse? What if in the end, nobody was spared?
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins.
Finally, you've returned, Doctor. Did you find anything of value?
Yes, nurse.
You've worked your first miracle, Doctor. Now, this patient here needs immediate treatment.
Duty calls. When the storm has passed, I'll show you how to mix the remedy yourself with the same basic ingredients.
Many thanks, Doctor. When you've finished, you ought to report to Dr. Swansea in his office. He's been looking for you. Seemed pressing.
You always knew the words to calm
This hospital seems to be falling apart. But in the circumstances,
Good evening.
I'm willing to
I'm
give
Dr.
the
Reed.
benefit of the doubt.
Can I help at all?
No,
Really? Why are you here, then?
I don't want to talk. My throat hurts too much.
I suppose that this pain is the reason you're here. Is someone taking care of you?
Yes. And no.
Could you at least tell me your name, sir?
Mortimer. Mortimer Goswick.
Do you need any help? You are not a burden, sir. Healing you is my responsibility.
And you have my gratitude for that.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
This hospital seems to be falling apart.
I'm sure you
Not really.
I see.
Circumstances, I'm willing to give you the benefit
Then maybe
of the
it's
doubt.
not just your throat that hurts, Mr. Goswick. Perhaps your sore throat is just the consequence of something more hurtful.
Yes, maybe. But I don't want to talk or even write about it now.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
I'll let you get some rest, then.
Good evening, sir. Doctor.
This hospital seems to be
Good
falling
evening, Mr.
I'm okay.
But in the circumstances, I'm willing to give you the benefit.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Goswick.
I don't want to talk, Doctor.
I have to go now, sir. But don't hesitate to contact me if you need any help.
Good evening, sir. Doctor.
Good evening, madam. Can I help you?
It's my son who needs you, sir.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed. How can I help your son?
I'm Beatrice Goswick, mother of Mortimer Goswick. Could you check on him, please, Dr. Reed? I've heard much of your talents as a physician.
What can you tell me about yourself, Mrs. Goswick?
Not much to say. Just take care of my Mortimer and I'll cover all the expenses. That's all that matters.
Are you really that rich? Most of the patients here are of a more humble origin, if I may say so.
Yes, thanks to my husband. May he rest in peace. I can cover any needed medical expenses.
May I ask if you have an occupation, Mrs. Goswick?
I'm a teacher by profession. I teach young women who are more ambitious about their futures than their families.
What do you think of your reception here? Any complaints?
I have had the uttermost reservations about this hospital since we arrived. But we had no other choice, considering the state of emergency.
Is there something in particular that's bothering you?
Some of the staff were not especially welcoming. I suspect they're not accustomed to dealing with patients of such social standing.
Tell me more about your arrival at the Pembroke Hospital. What gave you such a bad first impression?
The ambulance driver was quite rude, for a start. And that nurse, Miss Hawkins, seems to have quite a dubious attitude.
What do you mean?
She managed to secure a bed for my son despite the epidemic. It was a relief, but it wasn't cheap.
She charged you for a bed?
Yes, and I paid without question, considering the urgency of the situation.
I share your concern, Mrs. Goswick. Be sure that I'll talk to the people involved.
I don't expect compensation, Dr. Reed. But I'm aware such behavior would not be tolerated in other hospitals.
Goodbye, Mrs. Goswick.
I'm all right. Don't waste your time with me.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Reed. I believe we're going to be colleagues.
Reed, yes, I've been informed about your arrival. I'm Waverly Ackroyd. Welcome aboard, I suppose.
Does my arrival inconvenience you in some way, Dr. Ackroyd?
Let us just say that I don't particularly share Dr. Swansea's enthusiasm for hiring you. What we need here are reliable professionals, not overrated dabblers.
If you have a problem with me, Dr. Ackroyd, please feel free to tell me.
Dr. Swansea has imposed your presence on this hospital without asking anyone's advice. The benefit of his position. But I don't agree with it.
I know we've never met before, but I believe this hospital could use all the help it can get. You will agree with that, I'm sure.
Oh, but I have heard about you, Dr. Reed. Of course, you can't say the same about me, since I have not wasted my time courting the press.
There is no need for such animosity between us. Don't you think the epidemic is already enough to deal with?
That is one point we could agree on. And that is precisely why I want to be sure that you will be of help to this hospital instead of a burden.
Since your tenure in this hospital is longer than mine, perhaps you can tell me more about this place.
Let's just say I'm tired of the carelessness around me. I have always respected the skills of Dr. Swansea, but over time his enthusiasm has become displaced.
Carelessness? Exactly what are you talking about?
We're here to save lives. The people who trust us are not volunteering for experimentation. They're here to be healed.
I don't intend to run any radical experiments, Doctor. Even if I, as any good practitioner should, express an interest in pushing the boundaries of medical research.
Modern medical methods were created through audacity and ego. But there are rules in our line of work, and they're here to protect our patients.
I don't know what you've heard about me, but I have already proved my value as a practitioner.
I don't question your skills, Dr. Reed, but your motive. Is it money, fame, or are you truly dedicated?
And what exactly is that supposed to mean?
I served in the war just like you. But unlike you, I did not use the wounded to play the modern sorcerer.
Be careful what you insinuate, Dr. Ackroyd.
I only want you to admit you used those men to improve your theories.
Knowledge has always been and will remain our main weapon, and it has always come at a price. And personal initiative.
It is not a question of initiative, it is a question of integrity. These men and women have put their faith in us, Dr. Reed.
It seems you have bad memories of your military service.
I refuse to see this industrial slaughter as scientific progress. War only reveals the worst in men.
We can at least agree on something, Dr. Ackroyd. Thank you for your time. We'll talk later. Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Reed. May I help you?
I don't know if a third opinion is needed. Your colleagues are already arguing about my condition.
I see. Would you mind telling me more about your situation?
I'm Harvey Fiddick. All I want is to get me bloody arm fixed properly.
Are you satisfied with your treatment here?
Well, it's clear that I've chosen a bad time to be injured. Forgive my bluntness, but you seem overwhelmed by cases of the flu.
I won't lie to you about it. I'm afraid we are.
Are you sure you don't want to operate yourself, Dr. Reed? I have the feeling you're very capable. And your colleagues seem to think so too.
In other circumstances, you would be right. But for now, I don't think I can take on the responsibility. My apologies. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Fiddick.
I'm just a regular guy waiting to get his arm fixed, so I can return to work and to my family.
I was more curious about what you were doing before being hospitalized.
I'm a carpenter, and a good one too. But that means I need both arms to feed my family, Dr. Reed.
Tell me about the doctors who are arguing about your case.
Strickland and Ackroyd. They both want the best for me, but there's a lot of pride there. Doctors are no different from carpenters, it seems.
What do you mean?
I often had professional arguments with rivals on a building site. Difference is I disagreed about wooden nails, not flesh and bones.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Fiddick. I'll see you later.
I will not let you down, my boy.
Dr. Reed,
What can you tell me about the epidemic, Nurse Crane? I've been out of touch since I've come back to England.
everyday folk don't know how bad it is. The papers certainly won't tell them. Not as long as the war is raging on, anyway.
News on the front stated that the Spanish flu was under control, at least in Britain.
It seemed to be for a while, but that was only last summer. It returned with a vengeance just over a month ago.
What can you tell me about our patients here at Pembroke?
This hospital was founded to help the East End poor and needy. But since the war and the quarantine, we've had all manner of folk.
Can you be more specific?
Well, veterans, the elderly, dock workers. We even have a few mental patients. If there's space, we take them.
For how long have you been working here, Nurse Crane?
I first volunteered at the Pembroke in 1911, a few months after Dr. Swansea was appointed.
And before you arrived here?
If you must know, this was my first job.
Well, Dr. Swansea certainly has confidence in your abilities. Are you in charge of the nursing staff?
Not in an official capacity, but the Pembroke doesn't always work above board, so to speak.
What about medical protocols?
Dr. Reed, we don't have the money and resources here at the Pembroke like they do in the West End. We do what we can.
How is the duty roster organized?
Everybody works until they can't. If there's time, they'll eat a meal and shed a silent tear.
I'll see you later, Nurse Crane. Good evening, Doctor. I believe we're going to be working together.
Dr. Reed. Dr. Swansea informed us of your arrival, but I could not dare to believe we'd have such good fortune. Such an honor, sir.
Thank you. And you are?
I am Thoreau Strickland, Dr. Thoreau Strickland. I'm a great admirer of your work, Dr. Reed.
Please, could you tell me something about yourself?
I'm a great admirer of your work concerning blood transfusion, Dr. Reed. I run my own experiments. I'm convinced it's the future.
What made you choose to be a doctor?
I'm not ashamed to admit you and your work have inspired me. I am honored to have the opportunity to work by your side.
I'll give you some advice, but understand that nothing beats practical experience, which can be exhausting and solitary work.
Of course, sir. And don't worry, I will never allow myself to be a burden, neither to you nor this hospital.
I based my technique on my mentor's research. He helped me perfect my method. What is yours?
I'd rather not talk about it. For now, it's just theories and first approach. My process is purely experimental and unsuccessful.
As long as you're cautious and methodical, you may remain empty-handed, but you won't fail.
You're not the first one to warn me, but I am convinced knowledge is the main weapon against the ravages of this epidemic.
What can you tell me about the Pembroke?
Well, it has always been an honor to work with Dr. Swansea. But with your arrival, I can't think of a better opportunity to learn about blood transfusion.
Do you need help with anything in particular?
Well, yes, maybe. I'm waiting for a batch of products I ordered for my personal research, yet my supplier seems to have vanished.
Do you want me to play the errand boy for you?
Oh no, Dr. Reed. But if you went personally to his shop, what with your reputation and all, he wouldn't dare to refuse the products I need.
I see. Well, give me the address, for I may pass by if I have time. You seem quite optimistic. It's a rare and precious attitude in these difficult times.
I'm convinced that this epidemic is a test of endurance and dedication for us men of science.
Questions remain about our capacity to resolve the situation.
True. Last summer, during the first wave of the epidemic, I used to joke with Milton about the extra work. We're not smiling now.
What do you think of Dr. Ackroyd's aversion to modern medical methods?
It's a shame he's so narrow-minded. Dr. Swansea taught me that science is about exploring uncharted territory. I'm convinced that's true.
With the influenza and all that's going on, you should put your differences aside, don't you think? Why is it so difficult to work together?
I believe that if Dr. Ackroyd had been the one to discover the transfusion process, he would be the first to recommend its use.
So you believe it's just a question of jealousy and pride?
Dr. Ackroyd is as proud as he is blinded by his obsolete concept of medical science.
Tell me more about your willingness to experiment with new medical techniques.
Harvey Fiddick is a patient suffering from a severe injury that could cripple him if not treated correctly. I'm convinced your blood transfusion technique could help him.
What is it you really want? To save him, or to prove your point?
Fair question. I want nothing but to save my patient, Dr. Reed. Especially since I know Mr. Fiddick's story.
Tell me Mr. Fiddick's story.
Our first diagnosis was compromised because Mr. Fiddick lied to us about the real origin of his injury. He first claimed it was an accident.
But why would he hide such crucial information from us?
Because he is a proud father, ashamed of putting his children at risk because of his own negligence.
This personal involvement could also appear to be a lack of impartiality. You must know that a good surgeon must remain neutral.
I agree. But that does not excuse Dr. Ackroyd's behavior, a man who did not even take time to converse with his patient.
Do you think keeping his distance was a mistake?
All I know is that I'm taking care of human beings, with desires, hopes, and fears. Not some biological machine comprised of blood, bones, and flesh.
Goodbye, Dr. Strickland.
Good evening, sir.
I'm quite busy right now.
Tell me, Waverly, what do you think of Dr. Strickland's enthusiasm for his experimental research?
Strickland is playing with his patients' lives for pride and glory. Now that, sir, is unethical.
Are you thinking about something in particular?
Harvey Fiddick needs delicate surgery. I believe we should stick to the usual procedure, but my young colleague obviously disagrees.
And are you not afraid that your rivalry with Strickland may be blinding you?
Rivalry? I guess you could call it that. But I will never be childish enough to let my personal feelings affect my judgment.
Why do you wish to lead this surgery?
I strongly believe that Mr. Fiddick should not be butchered to test an unproven procedure.
I really hope you're right about this, Dr. Ackroyd. I'm trusting your judgment on this.
I'm not the kind of man who runs away from his responsibilities, Dr. Reed. There is no need for you to be looking over my shoulder.
Thank you for your time. Good evening, Mr. Fiddick.
Good evening, Dr. Reed.
Tell me about your injury, Harvey. Why do you feel so guilty about it?
My wife died because of me. And now I may lose everything because I've been careless enough to hurt myself. What an arsehole.
How could your job be responsible for your wife's death?
I was working a double. She went out to bring me a hot meal and got caught in a German bomb raid.
You can't hold yourself responsible for your injury, Mr. Fiddick. Unless you tried to hurt yourself.
Of course I didn't hurt myself. But I can't work until my arm is fixed. My children need to eat, Doctor.
Tell me more about the death of your wife, Harvey.
1915. I was in the army. Building workshops for the Royal Flying Corps. Helen was happy I wasn't sent to the front.
What happened?
The Germans sent Zeppelins to bomb the construction site, but they missed their target. My wife was bringing my dinner when the bombs fell.
How are your children after losing their mother?
They were smaller then. The only good thing about this is my Helen didn't bring them with her that night.
I'm sorry for your loss. So many died during the bombings. I served in France and witnessed the carnage there.
I would like to say that she didn't suffer. Truth is, I have no idea. I just know that I'm all that me kids have. Poor little bleeders.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Fiddick. I'll see you later.
My sweet girl. Reads me like a book.
Don't waste your time with me.
I never could keep anything from her.
So many deaths.
Good evening, sir. Can I help you?
Unless you're here to fix my face. No. I don't think you can help me.
I'm Dr. Reed. I've recently taken the position of head surgeon here. War injuries, am I right?
You guessed right, Doctor. German shell took my pretty little mug right off. But they still call me Thomas Elwood.
How is your stay with us, Mr. Elwood?
Oh, it's bliss. I just escaped death in the trenches to be surrounded again by the moans of the dying.
Can I ask you precisely why you're a patient here?
It's the pain, sir. The drugs don't work. It just hurts under the scars, if you get my drift.
Can I do anything for your pain?
Nurses gave me a bunch of pills. No effect. Told you. It's like the flames are under my skin, burning away.
Who is treating you? Is someone in particular looking after your case?
Nobody since the old and tired doctor spoke to me. Started to think I was forgotten about. Wouldn't blame you.
You don't seem worried by that.
My face hurts so much more when I smile or cry. I've learned it's easier not to speak. But be assured I'm smiling inside.
Why do you feel responsible for the injury, Thomas? What really happened?
I wasn't disfigured by any German shells. It happened during my leave. It was an accident.
Why lie about it?
Come on. It's one thing to come back disfigured by the Germans, and it's another to get injured in an accident that could have happened to anybody.
Reconstructive surgery has been very successful for some soldiers.
I don't want to wear a bloody mask for the rest of my life. I'd rather stay here and just be forgotten.
Tell me what really happened then.
I went with a whore in Rouen. Dead drunk I was. The hotel was a shithole. There was a fire that night.
Did you start the fire? Were you trying to avoid going back to the front? That's not uncommon, you know.
No. It's just that I was asleep when the flames reached the room. The girl was long gone. Bitch never woke me up. Left me to burn.
Where were you stationed, sir? Did you serve for long?
I really don't want to talk about all this shit.
No offense. I was pushing too much. I served in France myself. I just wanted to know what happened to you.
You were an officer, weren't you? Then I doubt we fought the same war, sir. No offense.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Elwood.
Fear and disgust on every street corner. The daily routine.
Good evening, Mr. Hampton. How do you feel?
Dr. Reed, is it? Oh, sir, I must apologize for my behavior.
What do you mean?
I was not myself in the factory. Fear and exhaustion made me say awful things to you, I'm afraid.
You remained perfectly nice and polite. A little delirious, perhaps. But who wouldn't be after enduring an abduction?
Thank you, Doctor. That's a relief. Now all I need to do is rest and return to my flock.
Do you know Tom Watts, the bartender from the Turtle? I met him before I found you in the canning factory.
Tom? Yes, of course. Always the helping hand, good old Tom. Without men like him, corruption and despair would have wiped out the East End long ago.
People are still in despair.
How could it be otherwise? The authorities have left us all to rot in this contagious nightmare. No drugs, no advice, nothing. It's a damn shame.
Who should I avoid in this part of town, then? Any particularly evil figures?
Not really. Most men and women are just doing their best. And it's not my habit to speak ill of people I know, Doctor.
What is the general situation in the East End docks?
The situation has always been tough, with a lot of tensions between the gangs and the dockers' trade union. The Wet Boot Boys are very nervous since they lost their leader.
Has the gang been threatening you?
Ah, no. I've had this nickname for so long, you know, the sad saint of the East End. No one dares to bug a saint, not even criminals.
Who leads the gang now?
Since Clay Cox went missing, it's his wife Edwina who runs the show, with the assistance of her minion, Booth Digby.
How did you end up in William Bishop's den?
I had received alarming news about his recent behavior. I went to his place and he refused to let me go.
Why did he abduct you?
William was an alcoholic. His addiction suddenly changed to blood. I don't know why. Just like a patient I met here. This Miss Hawcroft.
You dared to enter this awful place alone.
You're a hero, Mr. Hampton. Or a fool.
I'm just a man trying to help his friends, Dr. Reed. William Bishop was a conflicted soul, searching for light.
Have you made friends since you arrived?
Not really, but I recognize Miss Harriet Jones. I knew her when she lived by the docks. That poor woman had such a miserable life.
You never came to see her here at Pembroke? Receiving visits when sick can be an important part of the healing process, you know. We're not just bodies.
You're preaching to the converted now, Doctor. To be truly honest, I thought she was dead. She left the docks many months ago.
How do you feel, Mr. Hampton? Medically speaking, I mean.
I feel exhausted. Beyond exhaustion, actually. William drank so much of my blood in his madness. I feel empty.
You're in good hands here. Dr. Swansea is well versed in blood transfusion, and I'm sure he'll take the best care of you.
Thank you, sir. I believe all I need is rest. And then I can go back to the people who need me.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Hampton? I can't help but notice the cross around your neck.
I manage a night asylum for the poor and homeless of the docks. And I try to guide the lost and hesitant on the right path to our Lord.
Are you a priest, Mr. Hampton? A deacon, maybe?
Not at all, Doctor. I'm just a man of faith willing to preach the good word.
Why didn't you use your cross against William Bishop? To repel him somehow?
That's a very strange question, Doctor. A cross is no magical token, if that's what you were trying to say. Not mine, anyway.
Goodbye, Mr. Hampton. We'll talk again later.
It's locked.
Good evening, miss. I'm Dr. Reed, the new surgeon at the Pembroke Hospital. And who are you?
Your name has no meaning to me, mortal. You're nothing but dust blown by the winds of eternity.
I beg your pardon?
What are you begging for, mortal? My clemency? Well, tonight maybe I'm inclined to mercy. You'll never forget the night you met Thelma Howcroft.
You keep calling me mortal. Why is that? And if I'm mortal, what are you?
Well, Dr. Reed, if you must know, I'm a vampire.
And why do you believe you're a vampire?
I don't need to believe anything. It is what I am. It is what I feel within this hollow shell of flesh.
Please, describe to me how you feel. What is it like to be a vampire?
I can hear my body crumble from the inside as my flesh cracks and fades. I sense the last pulse of pustulant blood within my drying veins. I need new blood.
I see. Have you ever heard of Cotard's syndrome, Miss Howcroft?
Never.
It's a mental illness discovered by a French neurologist named Jules Cotard. The affected patients are delusional. They believe that they are putrefying, that they are dead, a ghost or a ghoul. Or in your case, a vampire.
Delusional, you say? Oh, sad and petty mortal. You can't even begin to understand the concept of immortality. And you think it is I who am delusional.
I'm assuming you must be a patient here. Am I right, Miss Howcroft?
It's only a cover. To hide from my enemies. I can leave whenever I want. As a woman, a spirit, fog, or bat.
Who are these enemies you mentioned? Can you describe them?
I cannot say for sure. But I sense their eyes on me from nearby. I feel them watching me every time I visit the garden near the morgue.
The staff here are not your enemy. They're here to help you, to care for you.
I'm not speaking of the doctors in white. I'm speaking of the men and women who hunt me. For I am a vampire.
I see. Don't worry. These people will not find you here. I'll personally make sure they leave you alone.
Thank you, mortal. But do not interfere with them, for you are no match for those that hunt me.
Who are you really, Miss Howcroft? I mean, apart from being a vampire.
Is that not enough for you, puny mortal? What do you require? Proof of my powers?
I'm curious to know who you were before becoming a vampire.
No, it's such a long time ago, I don't remember. Centuries of unholy life can have strange effects on one's minds, you see?
I'll leave you, Mistress of the Dark, to your nocturnal activities.
Fear and disgust on every street corner.
Good evening, Mr.
Evening,
How close are you to Miss Hallcroft? Are you aware that she thinks she is a vampire?
To wait for her next nibble is the best reason to stay here. Every time she approaches my bed, she treats me like something tasty. A normal person.
Aren't you afraid? She may hurt you if the game goes too far.
She's quite harmless, I can assure you. Her head's broken inside is all. While I'm busted on the outside. But she's still beautiful. Living proof that there's hope for me.
So do you let her bite you? You know that's not sanitary.
And why not? She's only supping a few drops of me blood. And the pain, it's real for once.
She could decide to bite less willing patients.
Then it's another good reason for me to stay here, Doctor.
You do realize she's mentally disturbed. It's called the Cotard syndrome. She truly believes she's a vampire.
In her madness, she never refers to my scars. And frankly, if I could, I'd join her world. It seems much more fun than the real one.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Elwood.
Fear and disgust on every street corner. The daily routine.
Good evening, Miss Howcroft.
I need blood, Doctor. Warm, rich, vibrant blood.
Tell me, Thelma, why do you feel so attached to Mr. Elwood? Why him?
I'm not sure, Doctor. I think we have a bond of some sort. We've both suffered so much. He's the only mortal I find interesting.
Would you say you and Mr. Elwood are romantically involved?
No. No, Thomas is a delicate soul. Even though he disguises it. But I am not the woman he needs. No, for I am a vampire, Doctor.
Do you plan to make him a vampire too?
Of course not. How could I inflict my curse on anybody else? I'm not that cruel, Doctor.
I'll leave you, Mistress of the Dark, to your nocturnal activities.
What your last thoughts would be, sir.
Fear and disgust on every street corner. The daily routine.
Please, Jonathan, come in. Fascinating, is it not? In the last decade, so many mysteries have been brought to light with our microscopes. The human body, biology's penultimate frontier. The more we explore its boundaries, the less we're able to trace a clear line between life and death. You, my friend, have a foot in both countries. The view must be vertiginous.
It's at least as vertiginous as chatting about vampires with you, I would say.
This must be all so new to you. This area of town, the hospital, a brand new life. How stimulating it must be.
I wish I could share your enthusiasm, Dr. Swansea, but my condition defies scientific categorization. Undead? Unalive? Immortality defies logic.
I cannot express my thrill at this serendipitous turn of events. The world's most eminent specialist in blood transfusions, a vampire. One might say a gift from heaven.
It may seem strange, but your words have brought me some comfort here.
Forgive me. I've been an admirer of your work for a long time, and now you are so much more than a brilliant physician. And please, call me Edgar.
There is no need to apologize, Edgar. You offered me sanctuary when I had none.
Very well. I have a task for you, Jonathan. Something that will require all your newfound skills.
Please, go on.
The Pembroke only survives through the generosity of our benefactors. Unfortunately, our main donor has found herself in a bit of a bind. Now, if you could help her out...
A spokesman or politician is what you need. That's not my calling. And until I come to understand what has happened to me, I require discretion.
Discretion is in order, Jonathan. Lady Ashbury has recently received rather indelicate correspondence that, if revealed, would jeopardize her position.
And you would like me to eradicate this threat?
By the stole, of course not. I would just like you to pay her a visit. Her ladyship is certainly near the tents outside, tending the sick. You can't miss her. Look for someone impossibly delicate.
Accepted. I'll see what kind of trouble Lady Ashbury is in.
Do you need something?
I have just a few questions.
Then ask away. I'm at your service, Doctor.
The man we pursued and slew in the canning factory, William Bishop, I believe, was he a vampire?
He was a Skald, technically speaking. The debate rages as to their classification. Some think them a subspecies of vampire, others something else.
Just for clarity, what differences are there between myself and a Skald?
A Skald is easier to eliminate, Jonathan, even if they remain formidable foes for the unprepared. Vampires... Now, vampires exist beyond the mortal realm.
How do Skalds come into existence?
The name means slave. The etymology may indicate that they are a lesser species of vampire. From what I know, vampires tend to despise them.
You mentioned something about a secret society. A brotherhood, if I recall. Could you elaborate?
Certainly. I've been a member of the Brotherhood of St. Paul's Stole for several years. We are pledged to monitor and report vampire activity in England as impartial scientific observers.
That explains your nightly wanderings about the docks and the questions you ask.
I feel it wasn't mere coincidence that led us to that part of town. There was something as yet unseen that set those chain of events in motion.
Yet you don't fear me. And still, you know the monster that lurks beneath the civilized surface.
The Brotherhood has studied your kind for centuries. We believe you are as supernatural as a lion is to a gazelle.
Since I'm the one working for you, what should I know about Pembroke Hospital?
Well, for many years, we have been the only medical facility in this part of town that people can rely on. We support the community here, as well as provide health care.
Where do we stand today?
Well, to be honest, we cope on a day-to-day basis. The first wave of the Spanish flu last summer took us by surprise. We lack many of the basic necessities needed.
What do you expect of me?
What we need is hope. You were a soldier. This is a war. This white coat's still a uniform. We fight to help the poor, the sick of the East End, the forgotten.
Since you seem quite the expert on vampires, what could you tell me about my condition and how it came about?
As men of science, our first step is always to start with what we know. Forget the myths, the hackneyed scrawlings, and the penny dreadfuls. They do not scratch the surface of the truth you now find yourself in.
The sun. The morning following my transformation. Its rays burned me. There was pain, smoke, and my skin blackened.
You will find there is very little that can kill a vampire, my friend. You have been offered relative immortality. The sun will most certainly hurt you, leaving you weakened and damaged, but it will not destroy you.
Must I take a life to live?
You are a vampire. You feed, and blood is the sole sustenance that can sustain your immortal frame. And only a living creature contains the nourishment you require.
We'll see each other again soon,